Welcome to the Vault XL. Thank you for joining me. Hope you all had a wonderful and safe weekend. Movie suggestion for this week is The Secret. It is a 4-part series airing on Tubi. It is based on a true story. I found this on Tubi last night, and it reminded me of Lori Vallow Daybell and Chad Daybell, two people having an insatiable attraction to one another, and the male decides that the two do not need their spouses any longer. So please check out this 4-part series, 4 episodes, The Secret, now playing on Tubi. It is my movie suggestion for the week. Thank you for joining me. Today is back-to-back lives pertaining to true crime. The first story is pertaining to Lori Vallow Daybell. We're going to talk about the brutal murder of her daughter, the dismemberment. How did she die, Tylee Ryan? What was the method of death? Because that has not been revealed due to the fact that she was dismembered and charred, burned, put into a bucket. DNA found at Mr. Daybell's home of said tools with her DNA on them. So we're going to discuss what happened. How did she die? It has been deemed by the coroner that her brother, JJ, was suffocated with a bag because a bag was found over his head. So that would be the natural method assumption that is how he was killed. How did they kill her? The placement of tools used, various tools to chop up this child. It is very gruesome to even try to fathom how they murdered her. And we would hope that she was not punctured while alive. So how was she murdered? News Nation is the source. Thank you for joining me. Second live today is about Summer Wells. We're going to go back into the book. It is almost 2 years coming up in June that a child went missing here in East Tennessee. And we're going to go back in history and in time to discuss the disappearance of Summer Wells, all the shenanigans that went along with her parents and YouTube Nation and Facebook and the rhetoric and the hype and the scams and the fraud. We're going to just chop it all up today. Thank you for joining me. You are listening to The Vault XL.
Okay, you hear me do this every so often. Graphic warning. Blink, 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 blink. Okay, you've been warned.
Hello, Dawn.
There's some really gross stuff I'm about to talk about. It's important because it's really part of this case with Lori Vallow. I mean, her daughter was dismembered and burned and buried in pieces. And it is part of the actual trial testimony and evidence in this case. So the fact that there's a grave digger and a guy who's kind of familiar with bodies as part of this case makes this a topic that needs to be discussed. So fair warning, we're going to talk about it because it's really not easy to do this. You hear about it in Hollywood, you hear about it in the movies, you hear about it on the news. Somebody was killed and dismembered and you know, etc. It is not easy to do it. And I'll tell you what else is not easy. Burning a body. No, you don't just start your campfire and burn a body. It doesn't work that way. It is far more complex than that. And I want to bring in someone who knows a lot more about it than I do, Dr. Jan Garavalia. You know her as Dr. G, medical examiner on the Discovery Channel. She's also the author of the book, How Not to Die, Surprising Lessons on Living Longer, Safer, and Healthier. Dr. G, you know, it's almost as though it becomes white noise when you hear somebody was murdered and dismembered. But the truth is, the way Tylee was dismembered and disposed of, it is not an easy process. It's not as though you can just take the kitchen knife and finish the job, is it?
Right. It is a very difficult process. And actually what they testified to today that Lori told her was it was messy and there was a lot of blood and it involved bleach and plastic bags. And that's true. You know, you have 5 liters of blood that still goes out of your body even after you're dead and they try to dismember you. And unless you have a very sharp knife or a bone saw, a hacksaw, or a hatchet, it's very difficult to do. And it takes a lot of time.
Okay, well, I'm glad that you brought those tools up because those tools were actually brought up in the evidence of this case. The FBI expert said that the tools that were used in the dismemberment of Tylee were, in fact, a knife, a hatchet, a cleaver, a machete, or something similar. But even with those tools, if you don't know what you're doing, will it be obvious to the medical examiner that whoever did this was just blindly going about this work?
Well, from the testimony of the anthropologist, there were a lot of cut marks that appeared to be that they didn't know what they were doing. Cut marks in the abdomen, cut marks around the pelvis. You're not going to separate the pelvis with a knife. So it's usually around the joints, as she testified to. And she was in so many pieces. It must have been really chopped after they, did the cutting.
Can I also ask you about the length of time? Because I think we're going to get some testimony about the number of hours that certain people's phones were in certain people's locations, right? At the time that Tylee was last seen, and JJ, of course, wasn't dismembered, but was wrapped up and disposed of that way. How long would it actually take someone, again, not someone like you who knows what you're doing, someone who has no clue how to dismember a body, how long would it actually take them in, say, like a bathtub setting or a crude setting?
I would say it would take me hours. And I'm not saying I'm an expert on dismemberment because that's not something I routinely do in my autopsies, but it's very difficult. It's difficult to open up a joint and disarticulate it. It's difficult. That would take hours, and in a bathtub, it's even harder.
And you are right. You are not an expert in dismemberment, without question. I only think that you know a lot more what's under the skin than the rest of us do. But
I've seen quite a few.
You've seen a few. Okay. The other question is about burning. I've spoken with death investigators before who enlightened me that it is not as simple as tossing the body parts into the campfire.
Again, you need a really hot flame. As you know, even cremating, you still have the chunks. In this case, he found parts. It's interesting. I obviously didn't see the parts and I didn't read the autopsy, but I know he did find an intact heart. He found a kidney. He did find some organs. So she's not completely burned. Some of that soft tissue didn't burn. I suspect that when they dismembered her, they probably chopped her up to try to get her to burn better. That's what I suspect.
And then probably gave up because it wasn't working. The neighbors reported those fires were burning for a very long time at a very unusual time that was not a typical time to be burning brush. So, Dr. G, I knew you'd have the answers. Thank you so much. It's always good to see you. Will you come back again?
Oh, sure.
Thank you for watching. Go to News Nation now.
All right, everybody. Thank you for joining me. News Nation is the source. Dr. G is the guest, giving her commentary pertaining to this storyline. One moment, please. Burning of the body at an unusual time. What time was that, Banfield? What will the neighbors say? That the time of burning, brush, so they thought. And let's be truthful in this commentary. Burning a body is going to smell. Now, many of us have not smelled death before, but I can assure you, if you have ever, as a female, burned hair with a curling iron, which I have smelled someone's hair many years ago. Two young ladies and I were going to go out for the night, and the young lady had put a hot curling iron on her hair. Her hair was very thin, and she was trying to curl a bang, a so-called banging, and the hair fell off. The curling iron burnt off, and let me tell you, the smell was of burning hair. Okay, so now imagine burning a human body plus hair. And she had a head full of hair, Tylee Ryan. So all that's going to be burning in a pile, however he had it situated. I don't know if there were other things burning with her. So you're going to be talking about burning flesh and burning hair, and it's going to smell. What time of day was he and his cohorts trying to eliminate this child? You hear Dr. G say that the body 9 times out of 10 was chopped up as to be burned. Of course, to get rid of the child. But stupidly, you would chop up a child and burn her on your husband's property. Knowing you are the mother of the children, law enforcement is going to be looking at you as a suspect to the disappearance of your children, and you would foolishly burn, chop up, murder the children, and then put them on Chad Daybell's property. You can't be any dumber. Because it's hard to fathom killing children, period. But if you're wanting to get away with a crime, why in God's name would you use the husband's property? And as I said, flesh will smell. Hair will smell. So did these neighbors smell any odd smells? Because as I said, you're burning a human body and it's going to smell. It's going to have its own distinct smell. The hair is going to smell. What was the manner of death for Tylee Ryan? You hear Dr. G talking about tools used and the chipping away at the body. Naturally, you have to hit bone, muscle, tissue. So that means they were trying to chop up this child below the belly button. So one's going to say, why there? What were you trying to do with the pelvis? Was it something symbolic? In trying to chop her up in this region and exact wounds to this region, we are hoping after death, because I do not even want to think of someone using these tools on a child alive. So what was the manner of death? Was she asphyxiated, suffocated, given a drug, hurt, shot, beat, what? We did not hear of any ammunition found in her remains, such as bullets. So how was she murdered? Just the thought of knowing, as I said, children being murdered by a parent, suffocating the baby boy, wrapped up like a mummy, finding DNA on the bag from the uncle. How could you look at your nephew and kill him? Look at your niece and kill her? Hair found from Lori. Some could say it's transference. Then some could say, no, she was there at the scene binding up her son. Now, Tylee, how did she die? Was she asphyxiated as well? Suffocated, sleep, pillow over the face, bag over the face. But why burn her? And which one died first? It is suspected that the girl child was murdered first because the boy was the last child seen on video surveillance at the apartment complex. So was there a reason for the order of the deaths? Kill the girl first. Why? Burn her remains. Why? Took too long. As you hear, parts of her organs were found. A kidney, heart intact. Amen. Get DNA. Evidence of her DNA on said tools at Daybell's property, used to obviously render death and dismemberment. Praying is just dismemberment and not murdered alive with any of these tools. And as you hear Dr. G say, it will be even harder to kill someone in a bathtub. Of course, because you only have so much room in a standard sized tub, and it would be hard trying to dismember a person because you don't have a lot of room trying to cut from side to side, which that would be the normal way to cut a person. So why were these people chipping at this child's pelvic area and not just cut in the stomach region to saw the child in half? Because that would make more sense. You cut limb for limb. You cut the arms off. You cut the legs off. Naturally, a person probably would start with the legs. And then you work your way up to the midsection, up to the arms. And then lastly, you probably would cut the head off. And sorry to be graphic, but she was dismembered and melted down. And I believe, yes, it took too long. She didn't burn as they thought. So how many hours were they burning this child? How many people participated in the death of Tylee Ryan? Where was she murdered? Was she murdered in Idaho, another state, at the park where they went? Did she see her killer kill her? Did she speak to her killer while they were killing her? And how can you look at a child's face that you are related to and murder him or her? Imagine the expression on these children's faces being alive and watching their own mother, uncle, whomever kill them. Screaming, stop, stop. Why are you doing this to me? What have I done to you? Imagine the thoughts going through a human's mind while being murdered by their own mother, uncle. And how in the world could you ever explain it logically that you took the life from your own child, your own niece, your own nephew, in the name of Jesus Christ? Jesus did not order the deaths of Tylee Ryan, J.J. Vallow, Charles Vallow, or Tammy Daybell. These were sinister acts from sick, demented minds of people who were obviously lost, disoriented in whatever fashion, greed, sadism, sexual desires, infatuation. There's no excuse. This is a very diabolical case. And when you watch the behavior, as been repeated to many of us because there are no cameras in the courtroom, the behavior of Lori is even more sinister. She's cried maybe twice since this trial started. She's cried when the pictures were put on the screen pertaining to the exhumation of the children, and she cried when her sister testified. But other than that, she is happy-go-lucky, grinning from ear to ear alongside her attorneys, writing in her notepad, whispering whatever to them during the court, pretending to be tired in court, wanting to be excused from court because she doesn't want to own her part. And as someone said earlier, she doesn't want to be there because she has to own that she is the orchestrator of the deaths of her children. Exactly. Will she testify? Lori Vallow Daybell. It will not be suitable for her to testify because she won't be able to answer any of the evidentiary material, the phone pings, the gathering of information, repeated conversations from eyewitnesses. She won't be able to explain herself thoroughly because there's a lot of circumstantial evidence against Miss Daybell. And all roads lead to Lori Daybell. So rather she is the one who took the blow to the son, put the bag over his face and suffocated him, killed her girl child, wasn't around when Tammy was murdered, was in the room when Charles was murdered. She is still the orchestrator, the co-conspirator. And once again, all roads lead to Lori Vallow Daybell. Hello, everybody in the chat. Thank you for joining me. If you'd like to donate to this great network, $BigAngie129 Cash App, stickers and chats are welcome during the live stream. This is a true crime day. So if you want to tune in a little bit later, the second live stream will be pertaining to Summer Wells. Will we find out the truth to how Tylee Ryan was murdered? Many people will probably be afraid to even hear the truth to how she was murdered, because the death of her brother is gruesome. And it is believed that the child was trying to get the bag from around his face and neck. They also said that Mr. Daybell, Chad, had scratches on his, I believe they said his neck or something. Do not know if it has anything to do with the death of the little boy. And I wonder what he is thinking now with all this information. I also heard last night that his attorney has been in court listening to the proceedings. And naturally, he's going back conferring with his client and any other attorneys that will be helping in the defense for Mr. Daybell. It's a lot to digest. And there's no sane way a defense attorney for Lori or Chad could say these people are not involved. And that's also including her deceased brother. I also believe Zalima and Lori's niece, Melanie. I believe they should have been up here as well, charged. Now, it is said that Zalima obviously is taking a plea, some type of immunity deal. But there are cases where when people are involved in crimes, such as in the mob, they'll let you testify and cut you a deal, but you still get some time, such as Sammy the Bull. He admitted to killing people for the mob, but he also had to still do some years in prison. I believe these people should not have gotten immunity. At least Zalima and the niece Melanie definitely needs to be on the chopping block alongside Chad and Lori, because I do believe she knows way more. I do believe she knows about the murders of these people, the plotting, because too many people have been hurt. And there's no way she could not have known, because her ex-husband was one of those people on the list. So how is it she wouldn't know about the children being murdered? I believe she knows. I believe she knew, rather. And at some point during the texting of all these people, they subtly told on themselves. Lori telling her to go somewhere safe after the death of Alex. It's a spiritual warfare, but yet taking no responsibility for she and Alex's and Chad's co-conspiring to get these people dead, as if they were working for God, for Jesus. Well, we know Jesus didn't speak to any of them to tell them to go out here and kill these people. They were working for Satan. But yet, Lori says, it's a spiritual warfare against us. No, you took war against these innocent people for your own selfish gain. And look where it got you. In a jail, moving around from county to county, standing trial for conspiracy to murder and fraud. Same with your husband. Will Chad Daybell tell the truth in court? Will he testify? Will he take a plea? Will he admit that, yes, we conspired to kill these people? I did it in the name of love, greed. Something else bothered me too that I heard. I probably will do a separate video on that. It's the fact that he wanted his own neighbors to put up bond money, put up their house so he could bond out Lori. This is the craziest mess I've ever heard in my life. You just got money from the death of Tammy, $130,000 life insurance policy, but you would expect your neighbors to put up money to get your new wife out of jail? How brazen. You had cash left over, and you also had your own house you could have put up, Chad. So why didn't you? Why didn't you put up your own house for your wife? And why didn't you forfeit the money you got from the death of Tammy, the life insurance policy? Oh, because you want to hold on to that money. And look what happened. You weren't able to be free to spend it all. Dismembering a body, how hard it is, as you hear Dr. G explain in this live commentary, News Nation. It would take her hours if she had to dismember a body herself. And that's right. Most people do not know how to dismember a body. How would you know how to dismember a body? Because as I said, the body is composed of organs, tissue, muscle, and joints and bone. And you have to have the proper tools to cut through all of those said things. And naturally, when a person is getting an autopsy, they have adequate tools to use to, open you up, to weigh your heart, your kidney, see what's wrong with you, cut open your scalp to check your brain for any type of abnormalities during an autopsy. So imagine someone not knowing anything about medical devices and where to cut, and you're just getting any type of tool you can to try to sever the limbs of a human being. So once again, what was the manner of death for Tylee Ryan? Where was she murdered? Where was the body stored? Did they take her body and her baby brother's body in that Jeep? The reason why the seats were removed. Or that was just to move furniture and said things when Lori was putting things in storage. Isn't it amazing when things go bump in the night? Nobody sees or hears anything at that time. It's only after the fact, when people are brought up on charges, is when people start to talk about, oh, yeah, I remember he was burning something on that day, that night. Isn't that interesting? But nobody notices the coming and the goings, the moving of totes and bags and rugs and things that have human bodies inside of them. It's only after the fact people start to recollect the SUV truck backed up to the door or the garage. People moving about strangely in the wee hours. Burning brush, allegedly, or trash late morning. And then you find out that wasn't trash. That wasn't limbs. That wasn't brush. That was a human body burning out there on Chad Daybell's property. You were yards away from a human being who was murdered 9 times out of 10 viciously, and then cut up, possibly at that property, and then thrown in to a pile to burn as to hide a crime of murder. And little did you know that a boy child was suffocated with a plastic bag, bound from feet up to hands, tightly tied up with plastic bags to also conceal his death, and then discarded like trash in a shallow grave on the same property alongside his sister. And almost a year, the children were found. And all this time, people were looking for them and curious to their whereabouts. And the mother lying, and co-conspirator, the brother, sickly, blindly following his sister's words, instructions to kill their family members. Then he later dies in December. And I do believe he is possibly murdered as well. Why not? Everybody else has been murdered. Tammy's body exhumed to be now asphyxiated. Crime scene staged by Mr. Chad and possibly Alex. Why not Alex? Because Alex held the key. He was the glue to this jacked up puzzle. Various pieces. Lori, Chad, Melanie, the niece, they're all complicit. Zulema, they're all complicit. And the sad part about this is that Melanie is walking around free, and so is Zulema. Now imagine the secrets they hold. And there are people walking by them and living by them and talking to them. And you might want to be careful of the company you keep. And Mr. Ian, you might want to be careful of sleeping with Melanie. You're married to a woman who holds secrets. And I keep telling people, if they'll do it to this person, they'll do it to you. Why would you be different? And that's what Chad and Lori should have thought about with this so-called passion they thought they had between one another. They met of all 2 days. And by day 2, she's already putting an alias in her cell phone with his cell phone number. Imagine that. And then here comes the months of conspiring to knock off family members, children, spouses. That must have been a hell of a love affair. But in the end, the children and the spouses paid the price of a diabolical love affair. I want you to go to my community page, and I want you to watch The Secret. It is based on a true story of a dentist who became infatuated with a woman who was a school teacher and also a member of his church, and she was infatuated with him. And when they realized they couldn't see a way out being together, he decided to plot the deaths of their spouses. And Lori and Chad came to mind when I watched this 4-part series last night. It is worth the watch. It is called The Secret. It is based on a true story. It has 4 episodes. It is a British true crime story now playing on Tubi. Please watch it. Because this story unfolded 30 plus years ago. And it goes to show you that people were the same 30 years ago when there was no Lori Vallow Daybell story, Chad Daybell story. These are other entities from across the pond who got entangled in an illicit affair and both conspired to kill their spouses. It is called The Secret. It is very good. Please pray for our neighbors in Texas. Several people lost their lives over the weekend at a mall in Texas. So I want to pray for those said family members and the community out there. I will be bringing you commentary this week pertaining to Deshina Kyle. Her perpetrator is to go to trial today here in Knoxville, Tennessee for her brutal murder and discarment of her body in a crawl space in a toolbox at an abandoned house belonging to one of his relatives. I will also be bringing you commentary this week pertaining to the West boys. Their adoptive parents, Jacqueline and Trezell West, are standing trial for their murder. And then I will bring you more commentary pertaining to the trial of Lori Vallow Daybell. Will we get the truth to how Tylee died? Will Lori testify? I believe the prosecution will be resting and the defense will put on their best theatrics. So will they have the Morning Star testify? Who will be their witnesses that will defend Lori Vallow Daybell? And what would be the ultimate jab to the gut is if they brought in Chad Daybell to testify. Bet nobody thought about that. Imagine that. Chad shows up to court to testify against his wife and tells the whole truth of what happened to all these dead people. Put an end to the wondering and speculations of what happened to these people the motive for the murders. Finally, somebody decides to just tell the damn truth to why they killed these innocent people. Because in the end, what's the purpose of a trial? To just have people sitting in there damn near about to pass out and throw up from all this graphic material, lies and storytelling, and people trying to barter their ways out of knowing these people were going to be murdered, when you could just go to court and tell the damn truth. This is why we killed these people. This is what we believed in. This is what I still believe in. I apologize. I stand account. I'm repenting for my sins. God, please forgive me for murdering my wife, these children, conspiring to kill these kids, conspiring to kill Charles. You see, the one thing about murder is that you have to have a victim. You have to have a patsy. You have to have a gullible one. And all of these people were gullible pawns, spawns, all of them. Each of them was using the other one. Chad was using Lori. Chad was using that Audrey lady as a buffer between he and himself and Lori. Lori was using him. Lori was using her niece. Lori used her brother. She used her children, her husband. Chad used his wife. He used those people in the podcast group. He used people to listen at the BS that he was spinning out to the world about zombies and so on and so forth. And perhaps he was just another tainted writer who was already out on a limb mentally. He started to believe the rhetoric, psychobabble in his head. Because, you have to be very leery of people who can make up stories, such as authors. And it's not to say that people who write fiction are mad or crazy, but perhaps maybe they start to believe the things that they have written. And then their mind wanders off into the abyss. And then a spawn has been. Because it takes a certain type of person to think up the macabre off the top of their head. And perhaps that is what happened with Chad Daybell. That he got himself lost up in his imaginary world, and he met someone who was already unhinged herself. And he began to spew his rhetoric, and she fell for it somewhere down the line. And then she took that same rhetoric, besides her own jacked up ideologies, passed it along to her brother, passed it along to her niece, passed it along to Miss Audrey, passed it along to the other Melanie, passed it along to her children, passed it along to her husband, passed it along to her brothers and sisters, passed it along to her parents. But sadly, it was her husband and children that paid the price. The ultimate price. And who was next on the hit list? Because as her brother said in recorded audio, she had no problem with cutting you off if you didn't agree with her. And in the end, she did cut everyone off. So who would have been next? Do you believe Audrey's testimony in court of being threatened to be chopped up? Why not? She's already killed several people, a few people. So that leads you to believe she was already tainted. Because how do you go from killing children, husband, to some random woman you met? You're saying something what? She didn't like, she didn't agree with Lori. So now you want to kill her. Well, Audrey don't you feel lucky if indeed your testimony is the truth? Because she did kill her children, and she set up the murder of Charles and conspired the death of murder of Tammy Daybell. So I would count my blessings. Because imagine you were alone with her at some point. You were alone with the killer. Or let's say a killer to be. Depending on your last interaction with Lori before the deaths of these people. So all this time you were laughing and drinking iced tea and talking about Jesus Christ superstar. You were sitting with Satan. And anybody in these podcast groups, neighbors, teachers, friends, associates, you had been sitting at the table with the devil and you didn't even know it. Chad Daybell, same. Listening to all this goofy rhetoric about zombies, fiction writer, perpetrating to be a Christian and a leader, you were sitting at the table with the devil. Alex Cox, same. Oh, he was my friend. He was good to me. I can't deny that. Well, what you can't deny is that you were friends with Satan. Doesn't matter. He treated you nice in the past. You were sitting at the table with the devil. It's one thing to be a sinner, but to just go around killing random people for no damn reason, it's a totally different category. And I'm sure God weighs all sin the same. Theft, gluttony, coveting, adultery. But to me, you're on a whole different level when you decide to conspire to murder someone. It's not self-defense. They were not attacking you, beating you, shooting you, holding you hostage. You sat and you thought about it for whatever reason. And then you exacted the crime. And this crime, plural, they are sickening because you're talking about random people who never knew one another. From my understanding, Ms. Daybell didn't know these children or Charles or Alex. And she lost her life because of a fat-faced Teletubby Build-A-Bear she was married to. And God forbid his children still believe in him. How in the world could you ever believe in somebody and children were found buried in his backyard? Neighbors could testify to things burning on the property. Something was burning. Yes, that something was Tylee Ryan. Not just a something, but a human being. A girl child. 16, had her entire life ahead of her, snuffed out prematurely by her own damn mother. So one would have to go back in the book of life and ask him or herself, who is Lori? And how was she walking this earth all this time, this sinister? The making of a monster. That will be my next live. You see, you don't know people. And when I watched that 4-part series late this morning called The Secret, it was interesting to see how diabolical this man was. And the woman who went along with it, I do believe at some point she realized her atrocious behavior to conspire to kill his wife and her husband, and she wanted no parts of him afterwards, because it goes back to what I have said about conspiring to kill a person. You now are looking at the devil himself and you are the devil. So what you have to tell yourself is once you have decided to murder someone, you now know what he or she is capable of. And if they will kill their wife or husband, they will do it to you. Why not? How are you different? And I believe this woman realized this. I just helped this man kill my husband. I just helped this man kill his wife. What in God's name have I done? It's too late. You can't go back. You can't take it back. I asked myself when I watched this series, how in the world did these people think they were going to be together? She had children, he had children. How are you going to mesh the lives together? The children, you don't know if the children would work out together, living in the same household. You thought it was just going to be easy knocking off your spouses? Oh, they set up a diabolical plan. But all roads still led back to them once the woman admitted having an affair to the detectives. And that's when the ball started to roll downhill. Because that's not the version that the man gave initially. I would pray that no one would ever think about murdering their spouse, boyfriend, girlfriend, because they don't want you. They want somebody else. You want out of the relationship. You want out of the marriage. You don't want to pay child support, alimony. You've got money in the bank. You're worried about how much they're going to get. The point is you chose that person. So you need to do the right thing and divorce them. Because as they say, you can always get money. And it's not worth dying in a prison or getting the death penalty to conspire to kill a person because you're worried about worldly goods. Because in the end, you can't spend the money if you're incarcerated. And you also need to seek a therapist if your only method of getting out of a relationship is killing your partner. The lies that were told in this story are abundant. And as I said, sadly, these people lost their lives to the lies. People thought they knew Lori Vallow Daybell. People thought they knew Chad Daybell, but they did not. People thought they knew Alex Cox, but they do not. You think you know the niece, Melanie, Miss Zulema, you do not. And I would be very leery of those two females. And don't you find it strange that the people following in behind Chad and Lori were females, more women than men? Stay woke. Perhaps this was Chad's ultimate plan in the beginning, spewing out all this sick ideology, was to knock his wife off and find a gullible patsy to go along with the program, and in walks Lori Vallow Daybell. Who's to say? And it would be nice for somebody to finally come forward and tell the truth to this diabolical plan and how it came to fruition and the motivation. Was it just money? Was it infatuation, obsession? Was it greed? Was it people wanting to check out of their responsibilities as husbands and wives and mothers? Or was it all of the above? The abuse to the child's body and the pelvic and the pubic region, was it symbolic of something? Sending a message about her personally? Why was there more damage done in that area of Tylee Ryan's body? And was it done after death? These people are sick. There's no rhyme or reason for what was done to Charles Vallow, J.J. Vallow, Tylee Ryan, and Tammy Daybell. And I do believe Alex Cox was murdered as well because he, as I said, was the glue to the puzzle. And you couldn't have him hanging around. I believe they used Zulema to kill him. And she'll probably take that secret to the grave. Because her testimony bothered me. Speaking softly into the microphone as if she was afraid to talk. And every other word was And that's usually a sign of someone who is rehearsing and has rehearsed their testimony because they are lying. And the one thing Queen is good at is reading people. That wench is a part of this BS, and that niece is a part of this BS. And as someone else has said in commentary, you don't know who else knows about the orchestration of these deaths. Stay woke, everybody. Because if you have people testifying now of being threatened by Lori, hearing of them talking about Tammy dying before 50, JJ and Charles not going to live, going to have a car accident. They were trying to tell you then they were going to kill them. You weren't listening. You weren't listening. What did I tell you about murder? I got to tell somebody. There is always somebody that knows the plan. It's a matter of if he or she will tell it. They couldn't wait to tell they were going to kill these people. So they subtly predicted their deaths with Jesus Christ superstar ideologies and apocalyptic BS. You all weren't listening. They were telling you they were going to kill these people, and you stood idly by, listening at this BS, whether you believed in it or not. You rode the damn ride. And you are lucky yourself to be breathing. Because if a person will kill their own child, kill their own spouse, who are you to them? You are nobody. These children and husbands and wives were pawns to two random people who crossed paths, 6 degrees of separation. They met on this earth. They met and they became evenly yoked before marriage. And they knocked off their children and spouses to be together for whatever reason. And the reason really doesn't matter. We as civilians are just curious, but in the end, it doesn't matter because it was wrong. And it was a sin. It is a sin to kill. And now they have forfeited their own freedom for money, power, sex. Was it worth it? Who killed Tylee Ryan? How was she killed? Where was she killed? And is there some symbolic reasoning for the way she was dismembered in the pelvic region? And why did they decide that she needed to be burned to death? Or was she already dead when they decided to burn her remains? And why did they choose Chad's property? And how did Lori think she was going to continuously walk around without her children, no explanation, and the authorities not investigate her? But perhaps when you have become unhinged and delusional, you are mentally ill, you are sinister, which and soever, you don't care. So all the things that's obvious to us that are half-assed saying, it meant nothing to them because they had set in their minds that they wanted to be together and they did it by all means necessary, even at the expense of killing innocent people. I want to thank you for your time. Please go to my community board for said updates. Prayers for Texas. Several people were murdered at a mall in Texas. Prayers to the community and the families. Please check out my community board for the movie series, The Secret. You will find it a very interesting 4-part series. It will remind you of Chad and Lori's sick story. And the second live today will be pertaining to Summer Wells. We're going to chop up the storyline that unfolded here in my region of East Tennessee of a little Caucasian girl that went missing and the drama that unfolded with her disappearance. I will drop the link for people to come up on the panel to give their opinion pertaining to this saga that is now going into 2 years, and there is no new information to the whereabouts of Summer Wells. Where is she? What happened to her? And who holds the key to her whereabouts? And if indeed she was murdered, who killed her? And will the truth ever be revealed? And will any suspect, all suspects, be brought to justice? Channel donations, Cash App, Big Angie 129. Stickers and chats are welcome during this live stream. In any live stream, I want to thank you all. God bless all of you. Next live is pertaining to Summer Wells. June will mark 2 years that this child went missing. We're going to discuss it. I will be bringing you more content this week pertaining to John Bassett, who murdered Sheena Kyle here in Knoxville, Lori Vallow Daybell, and Jacqueline and Trezelle West. Thank you for joining me. You have been listening to The Vault XL.